30 times. Ten times more. Two times more. Letting go and stop.
You listen to that story on the person on the stage. Your next meditation, you are not going to go half in. You're going to go all in. That's all I want, is I want people to go all in. I want to provide people with my greatest understanding of the truth, and then numerous opportunities to experience it, nothing more. And when the magic starts to happen, it's beyond, way bigger than me, it's beyond my control. All I want to do is provide the environment where they feel safe enough to begin to create.
That's the beauty of what this is all about. And at the same time, it contrasts with a story that we've been conditioned to believe, which is that we do not have that power. That if something happens, if that cancer goes away, spontaneous remission. It was a random chance event, and you had nothing to do with it because you can't have anything to do with it, because that's what capital S science, or capital M medicine perhaps, has been saying for so long. And then you start to witness it, and you start to understand, and you look at all of those clinical studies about the placebo effect, and you understand that this has been measured and is continually measured in every clinical trial we have, that the mind can influence the body. And what you're doing is you're taking it to that ultimate level of how much can the mind influence the body, and measuring it and showing it, and you're having the felt experience of seeing people who have done it. And you can read whether someone's full of shit or whether they're in tune, just like you can tell if a guitar's out of tune and it's playing, you're like, something's not quite right. You can tell that these people have gone through this experience, and it begins to shift your understanding of what's possible, and then allows you to step into that sovereignty, say, wow, what am I capable of? And that is a beautiful place to be. So for people who want to understand a bit about some of this methodology, it is a formula that you have, going in there, and it's the matter of breath work. Starts with some breath work, typically, not always.
Pretty intense breath work.
Pretty intense breath work. So there's the breath work, then there's the meditation, and then there's the cultivation of that emotion combined with your vision of the future. So if you could, take people through the reason why this formula goes in the direction that it does.
Well, first of all, I never planned on doing any of this. I'm just a guy, and I have a passion to learn, and I have a passion for the divine, and it's always been something that I've been aware of. It's a persistent feeling that never seems to go away, and I think people come to this work because they have that feeling. They may not be able to put into words what they feel, but it's an instinct in their mind that never goes away, that there's more to reality than this dream.
Thirty times. 10 times more. Two times more. Letting go and stop.
When I started on this journey and what the bleep came around, and that became an overnight sensation, and I was doing all the bleep conferences, people ask me the same question. And I pay attention to questions because that's what's the real dialogue. They would say, okay, your thoughts create your reality. Okay, how do you do it? I thought that was a great question because this is a time in history right now. 15 years ago, it was philosophy. Quantum physics. Now everybody's informed. Now people. This is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. Just to know how to do it. And if you give them that sound scientific information, I now know that if I can speak it in a way that nothing is left to conjecture, nothing is left to superstition, nothing is left to dogma. They know exactly what they're doing and why. And the moment you know the what and the why, the how starts to get easier. So I will deliver concepts, ideas, mix different forms of science to create a model of understanding. And I now know that if that person, as I develop this model of understanding, can explain that model to someone else, they're wiring it in their brain. They're installing the hardware. If they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain, and they're not going to believe that they can do it. So if they can turn the person next to them between the two of them and build a model of understanding, they're making their brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. They're changing their mind. Mind is the brain in action. If I keep reminding them of what they're learning, nerve cells that fire together wire together. They're installing the circuitry. Now, the next step is to provide the environment and give them the proper instruction to get their behaviors to match their intentions, to get their actions equal to their thoughts, to get their mind and body working together. If they do, they're going to run into a new experience. Now, the crazy thing about the experience is learning is making new synaptic connections. That's what learning is. Research shows that if you pay attention and learn something new and you repeat it just for an hour, you're going to double the number of connections in your brain. That's a lot, 1,600 to the 3,200 connections. That's a lot of extra connections. But if you don't review it, if you don't think about it, if you don't repeat it, those circuits prune apart within hours or days. So if learning is making new connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections, you got to review it. It's so much easier to forget than remember when it comes to this stuff, and it's a constant process.
Thirty times. Ten times more. 2 times more. Letting go and stop.
So then, if they can get their behaviors to match their intentions and they have a new experience, experience enriches the philosophical circuits in the brain, but when those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical. And that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. When you start feeling unlimited, when you start feeling worthy, when you are having an experience that causes you to be more in love with life, it is that chemical release from the limbic brain that teaches your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. So if knowledge is for the mind, experience is for the body, and in that moment the person's embodying the truth of that philosophy, and now they're selecting and instructing new genes from the experience because the chemistry that's coming from the environment is information. And so genes make proteins, and all of a sudden they start wearing a different body. Repeat it over and over again. Do anything over and over again. Neurochemically, you'll condition your mind and body begin to work as one. Do it enough times, now your body will know better than your conscious mind. Now it's innate in you. Now it's second nature. Now it's simple. Now you know that you know. You may not know how you do it. You don't know how you know how, but you can do it because it's subconscious now. So now that implicit memory, now you're mastering that knowledge. You're mastering the philosophy. You're becoming the knowledge. You're embodying it so much so that it's automatic, it's effortless, it's easy. So when we started looking at people's ability to regulate their brainwaves, we just published the paper, it just got released yesterday. Our students in our community can do it in 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, 11 seconds. It's not like, hey, I'm getting the divine ahead of you. It's just like they've done it so many times, like it's like driving a stick shift. It's not a difficult thing, but they practiced. And they came up against their blocks. They came up against their limitations. They came up against their frustrations. They came up against their analytical mind, and I want them to in a week-long event, because if not now, when? Now is the new later, and let's do it now, right?
Yes.
So then what we learned when we started studying brains, well, we were doing pre and post measurements, and we've got thousands and thousands of brain scans. We have real-time brain scans too, and when I started seeing people whose brains were getting worse during a meditation, I said to them, what are you doing in there? And 100% of the time, they were analyzing their life or themselves within some disturbing emotion. And if emotions are the record of the past, and those emotions are derived from the hormones of stress, they were thinking in the past. And I learned right in that moment that if I got a person past the emotion, cross the river of change with me, forget about the emotion, just to keep overcoming it. Forget about the past. Dragging people out of their past is the work.